Hey, this is Russ Dizdar, ShatterTheDarkness.net. If you are taking this from Dynamic Discipleship, it has been designed to help new believers in part of the understanding of spiritual warfare, part of our understanding of dealing with demonic oppression and attack in our lives. But it's also been developed to speak to many individuals out there who are hearing voices, feeling weird presence in their life. Even from the notes from the newsletter that we have, let me just read this. The title of it is How to Break Free from Dark Spirits. It goes on to say this: the problem today of voices in the head, quote, and involuntary influences, quote, is happening to too many. The article a friend sent me on Germans who are crying out for help to free them from those unwanted voices is more evidence of the plague of harassing dark spirits. Since the 60s, so many have opened ancient doors where the whispers of seducing spirits scratch and knock. Now listen, we're going to go over again how to break free. And over the years, many years now, we've done deliverance and exorcism. We've always called it, we like to call it Freedom Encounter. It's all about what Jesus came to do. Now listen, if you are listening, two factors. God is real, He is spirit. And the demonic side, they are very, very real. And so we want to deal with the fact that the ramping up of demonic presence in the last days, as the Bible predicts, is unparalleled in all of history. There will be an unprecedented number of people being influenced, guided, directed by seducing spirits, voices, a presence. Ancient rituals will be brought out, and spirits will be conjured. Spirits will come through gateways, doorways, whatever you want to call it, and they're going to be all around us. I can tell you story after story of dealing with individuals who had voices in their head. I told of a young girl who came into church one day, and she stood there at the very end of the service and wouldn't come forward, and people took me to her, and I began to speak to her, and she would just nod her head, and I can tell from many experiences that I've had before with folks that something was telling her not to speak, not to talk. And I finally said, "Do they not want you to talk to me?" And she shook her head, yes. I said, "Did they not want you to come forward and be prayed for?" And she shook her head, yes. And I knew right away that the demonic presence was there. I felt that agitation. So I began to pray, again, in the authority of Christ, and instantly the demonic manifested. She literally fell between the pews and the benches, but she was set free. And another time, the young lady came in, and the same thing. I was told, basically, you could see that she was bound up again, voices in her head. Literally this time, as I commanded for the demons to come forward, without harming the girl, literally she fell to the floor. I commanded the demonic presence to say its name, and it did. And many times, if we've done deliverance sessions, I would command, "Tell me your name. How did you get in there?" And again and again and again, people. I mean, I'm talking about police officers, teachers, people in churches, from all over the place have come to talk about voices in the head, dark influence, involuntary influence, and feelings and thoughts and bondages. And listen, let me say to Satanists and to Luciferians and New Agers and others, if you let them in, you're going to have to live with them. There's only one way out, only one way to gain freedom. They've come to deceive, to seduce, to sabotage. I mean, if you want to read the story of voices in the head, if you want to see the end game of the demonic presence, read the Gospel of Mark. And as a matter of fact, it's the gospel that we're encouraging everyone reading the materials from the discipleship page or listening to this broadcast, that you would read the Gospel of Mark and literally note how many times Jesus encountered demonized individuals. Now listen, regardless of where you're at, New Age or whatever else, hear me out. Because in the day that you and I are living in, it's without question that massive spiritual communication has been going on for a long time and ramping up. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say something because I mentioned it in the article in the newsletter, that since the 60s, so many have opened ancient doors where the whispers of seducing spirits scratch and knock. Now, I was reading an occult historian. He wrote a book, I believe the title of it is The Occult Establishment. He mentioned there that there are 2 times in recent history that are the 2 times of the greatest proliferation of occultic literature that normally leads to all kinds of new spiritual experiences, spiritual societies, spiritual groups, mediums, psychics, all that. 2 times. The first time in pre-Nazi Germany, where massive literature began to be unleashed in that culture, which opened the doors to secret societies and spiritual groups and spiritual seekers and experiences, literally mediums and psychics and readers of the dead, voices in people's heads and so forth. Now, this continued to spawn all over Europe and into England, but he mentions, again, the occult historian mentions, that the second greatest proliferation of occultic literature occurred in the 60s in the United States of America. So I want you to hear that if you remember the 60s at all, not only in the music did we find a lot of occult teaching and even satanic teaching and satanic mention to Satan and demons and so forth. You can read it in a lot of the experiences that those who had the drug experiences opened the doors to the demons. And of course, all kinds of occult literature that came in opened the doors to channeling, seeking spirits, inviting spirits into their lives, new mediums that would be readers of the dead and psychics and so forth. So the 60s was literally an influx of literature, and as individuals read the literature and began to seek the spirits, and it comes from both sides. As lost mankind, our human spirits are dead to God, but still alive spiritually. We have spiritual capacity. What we don't realize is that unaided, the dark spirits, who are the most proficient in seduction and deception, can come, as Satan himself does, as an angel of light. And so as an angel of light, the 2 specific things will always occur. Number 1, lead people away from the real Christ and the real message of Jesus Christ. Number 2, lead them further and further into darker spirituality and into deeper and darker bondage. So as those experiences began to occur, along with the drugs, the reading, the rise of the Church of Satan, the incredible rise of the New Age movement, and all kinds of new spiritual streams from the East and other experiences, well, millions of individuals in the United States, and this has already been going on in Europe and in England, began to get in touch with spirits and spirituality, and they began to get attachments and literally possession. They began to get spiritual experiences. They began to leave their bodies, hear voices, contact the dead, and so many had been highly deceived. The difficulty now is in the 80s and 90s and now in this 3rd millennium is millions of individuals, Europe, the UK, and the United States, have been crying out in psych wards, among therapists, showing up at churches, finding themselves in jail because dark influence, dark voices began to speak to hearts and lives, guide human beings, deceive human beings, to the point of even suicide and many other things. So we need to realize what's going on. Regardless of where you're at right now, know that the Word of God demonstrates the demonization. The Greek word diamonizoi. People can be demonized, even in levels, from the level of just being harassed, oppressed, attachment, attack, to the point of total possession, like we see in Mark's Gospel chapter